Hey guys, it's Bree. I hope you're having a fantastic reading week. And I wanted to talk to you actually about a book that I read a little bit ago, and that is Orbital Cloud by Taiyo Fujii. This is a release from Hikasoru, which does a lot of translated work, specifically from Japanese into English. And I first heard about this book from Rachel over at Kalanani. This is a pretty interesting story and is, I would say, a pretty high level. It is kind of a mashup of science fiction meets world emergency meets spy novel, and I really enjoyed it. The story follows a man named Kazumi, who is an amateur meteorologist living in Japan. Kazumi is intrigued by this unidentified satellite that is orbiting Earth. The object has no real clear origin. It's not following the typical orbital patterns. There's just something wrong. The item is dubbed the Rod from God, and Kazumi manages to get enough information to start identifying it. All of a sudden, he's being reached out to by an Iranian scientist who says that the Rod from God is based on a design that he came up with, that is based on his research. Kazumi is quickly spirited off by essentially the CIA and is brought to America, where he's supposed to locate the items within the Rod from God, figure out what's going on, and work to bring it down, ideally with the help of this Iranian. North Korea gets involved. There's all sorts of intrigue. It's actually really fun. It's a little bit of like a slow burn in that it's not always action-packed. A lot of the discovery and intrigue happens from like computer discovery and data analysis and things like that. It's not a shoot-'em-up spy novel, but it is action-packed. It is really engaging. I thought the characters are done really well. I think arguably the best part about this book is the way that Taiyo Fujii manages to make the scientific explanations be really accessible to an average layperson, but not feel like they're condescending or talking down to anyone. And the integration of those explanations is done in a way that's so smooth. There's really no point at which you feel like somebody was asking a question in the novel just so that he could give you the explanation. On top of that, I think Fujii does a fantastic job of explaining the intricacies of international communications around science and around kind of the diplomacy of investigations. Sometimes when you have these kind of spy novels or political intrigue novels at an international level, the big question seems to be, why doesn't anyone talk to each other? And Fujii does a fantastic job of explaining why seemingly natural allies might not actually come together in the face of a threat from space. And on a super geeky, I'm a UN nerd level, he talks about the peaceful uses for outer space and the international treaties that like people actually have to, at the very least, nominally abide by, and like the explanation of when they do and when they don't and how they get around this international treaty is so good. It sent my little UN lover heart aflutter. For me, a lot of what really sold this was the high-level dialogue about the way that science and accessibility is a real problem for the developing world. A part of the motivation we find out later for some of the actors within the book, not all of them, but some of them, is the inaccessibility of really research and shared knowledge about what really we think of in the West as very standard scientific fact. That members of the scientific community in places like North Korea and Iran have no access to a lot of the world's knowledge is a really big deal. And that plays into how Fujii talks about science in the international community. Fujii makes a fantastic point in clarifying that by blocking out a lot of developing countries from scientific development and technology, from that innovation, that we're actually really damaging ourselves. We are precluding some of the brightest minds in the world from being able to participate. And he makes a really interesting case for rethinking some of the ways that that is affecting the world. On another geeky note, he makes fun of the American measuring system. Like none of the NORAD people know how far a kilometer is. And while I'm pretty sure that if you work in the scientific community here in the US, you probably are pretty adept at switching between imperial and metric, it was real funny. It was super shady in like a real enjoyable way. Fujii's sense of humor is pretty fantastic and like is really one of the things that rounds this book out from being not overly technical. Again, I could have done with a little bit more fast-paced stuff. I could have done with a little bit more character development because sometimes the characters are almost more of the setting than the actual like stars of the show, which is totally fine. I really enjoyed that regardless. This was just a really interesting and fantastic read. I really am going to be keeping an eye out for more of Fujii's stuff, and I'm really, really grateful that I picked it up. If you have read Orbital Cloud, you should let me know what you think about it, because there's so many aspects of science, of discovery, of international communications, and the communications between kind of amateur and professional science lovers that I found really intriguing in this. This book was actually a patron pick for, I believe, the month of January. And it was a fantastic shout out pick. It was a great way to start off the year. If you want to support me here on the channel, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you. And remember to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more content. I will see you guys later. Bye.